Hello and welcome everyone to the fourth installment of the iGraphics webinar series Using Performance Management to Drive Continuous Improvement. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Mark Stanford, Senior Director of Program Management at iGraphics, and Professor Mark von Rosing, Head of the Global University Alliance and founder of Lead Frameworks. We are going to be recording today's webinar and sharing the link to the recording later today. And just a reminder, if you have any questions during the session, enter them into the GoToWebinar questions window, and we will answer them at the end. So I want to thank all of you for joining today's special event, which is the fourth session of our executive webinar series on innovation and transformation. This series explores concepts that are meant to enhance your way of thinking about how your organization creates value, optimizes performance, and improves business outcomes. We started this series with an overview presentation on how successful companies approach and achieve innovation and transformation, which if you missed it, we really encourage you to check it out at the link that's shown on the screen. And the research presented in that session laid the foundation for the rest of our series that we're going through. It dives into the specifics of each of the business model domains that were discussed: value, revenue, service, performance, cost, and operations, and how the focus on these domains help enable innovation and transformation. So in the second session, we explored the fundamentals of cost-cutting initiatives specifically. Then we moved on to examine how you can achieve business transformation through managing your business operations. And in today's webinar, we'll wrap up our discussion on transformation by getting into driving continuous improvement through performance management. Professor Mark and our own Mark Stanford will show you how to link performance objectives to relevant business goals, identify performance opportunities, set up performance measure metrics, define measurements not only for processes but for your overall business, service, and applications, improve decision-making and reporting flow, and use control and monitoring for continuous improvement. But before we dive in, I just want to take a quick minute to introduce Professor Mark von Rosing to those of you who don't know him. Mark is the founder of Lead Frameworks, which is the fastest-growing framework group, both in terms of overall adoption and the number of certified practitioners. They partner with major BPM vendors that have adopted LEAD principles and modeling practices, and Mark himself has actually been involved in the development of frameworks such as TOGAF and the SAP ASAP implementation methodology. He's also a university professor and leads the Global University Alliance BPM and EA curriculum, and is the author of a number of books on business process management. In fact, he's going to be soon releasing a new book in 2014 called the Business Process Management Handbook. That handbook targets the spectrum from students to executives that want to learn more about how to leverage leading practices to help them gain competitive advantage. It looks very good. Looking forward to seeing that upon its release. And of course, we're also very pleased to be partnering with someone as knowledgeable as Professor Mark von Rosing to bring you this webinar series, upon which we've also based a free workshop that the professor and iGraphics have been offering to our webinar viewers. If you're interested in how you can apply these concepts that we're presenting to solve your own challenges in your own organizations, stay tuned. I'll talk about this a little bit more after the presentation. So it's a pleasure to have you again with us, Mark. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Gretchen. That is very kind of you. So, I would like to start sharing. Today our topic is, as Gretchen mentioned, continuous improvement and performance management. So, the main challenge many organizations have, that we at least see, is how this all fits together. We know organizations have value drivers. We know they have performance drivers, they have stakeholders with different value expectations, as well as performance expectations. And the link how they all fit together with one's processes, as well as goals, measurements, monitoring, and continuous improvement, that's a subject we want to talk about. So we all know this is kind of like the challenge of performance modeling, because it includes both performance management, performance monitoring, performance analytics, as well as performance drivers. So our examples today will be around insurance, So much in the other sessions we have had before governments, with aspects of banking, with aspects of finance, and we have aspects of oil and gas. So right now we would like to have the focus on insurance. So if we start to jump in, our first model will describe it from a way of thinking. Then we will go into the way of working with it, and then in the way of modeling, where we'll kind of show the way of thinking of how to capture this already in aspects of a tool within iGraphics. So that a little bit of the background. Let's jump directly into it. So we see here the value drivers, and let's take a look at how these connect. So both process and performance intelligence. How do you set it up? The first aspect is, and the examples will be around claims, so claims handling in insurance organizations. This is real life work we have done. I think many will actually have a feeling of how do you do case management, how do you do claims, how do you do it within the organization. So let's proceed. So we have the corporate value already looking at it. That's timeline guiding principles who look at. This could be, for example, the decrease of customer issues and challenges through real-time problem solving. So that's the first link of claims. It already links to the very aspect of an organization that wants to improve its corporate values through obviously better interactions of customer issues and challenges. That's us. We obviously see that's more business model relevant subject and therefore value driver aspect. Then you have links between claims and strategy. What kind of links could that be? That's better and faster decisions through increased strategic information sharing. So insurance organizations today, they don't only want informations of their operations, they want to know how does it happen, how do we handle it, what's our better and faster decisions through our information sharing of what we are doing in the claims. So that's the link to the strategy. Then there is links to aspects of one's strategy map, which are more around the increased strategic decision-making structures with the corporate analysis. So it links to the wish of need to have corporate analysis and decision-making. Then there is still the link to the scorecards of organizations. And this is where we see there is the overlap or the link between the value drivers and the performance drivers. So here you see by the color code of the subjects of the business model below and the process models. So in this we actually see the link that actually links the value drivers and performance drivers is the handling of the claims, meaning literally the performance through interlinking of strategy and operations to execution. So now we go into some of the other subjects of performance drivers. We would see cascading measures to be a really big challenge, meaning increasing and improving the operational decision-making around customer claims handling, meaning the key measures for all departments and individuals that are involved in the claims handling. Furthermore, we see how this interlinks with the process performance measurements. This is where you link the balance scorecards, for example, to processes such as the reporting, the claim handling, the claim compensations. So this would be uncovering operational deficiencies with the performance analytics of the claims. In addition to that, we furthermore see that there is a link between the performance drivers, the processes and applications, meaning the automations of the process, in order to really monitor and measure how this is done. So this is the measurements of the activities and the processes in real-time action. Why? Well, it's about decrease of system complaints through real-time system measurements and thereby problem solving both through the systems and system support of call center, agents, service employees, and the case manager, which obviously is the claim provider and helper. So this is the conceptual context we want to talk about. We see it helps in three main things: better and faster decisions through business insight within the claim. Furthermore, proactive management through performance management, as well as continuous improvements, links between the value drivers and performance drivers, and through real-time process lifecycle management, that you actually can see and interact with what is happening, how can we do things better. There we see the need of linking business model and process models together. Right now, the challenge would be, how do we work within organizations with this? And we have done 20 steps when organizations would be working with this. These 20 steps, let's say, how do you put this all together? So, first step is the indicator, name of the performance indicator. In our example, it would be average cost per claim. The indicator number you furthermore need. You need the definition, meaning measures how much of your organization pays out for each claim filed by your customer. Then you need the performance indicator category, which is either the KPI or as well as the PPI, meaning the process performance indicator. Remembering that a KPI, if you need to measure it or want to measure it in the system, it needs to have a link either of a financial or an operational KPI. If not, the system can't measure it. And if it is in the process performance indicator, it either needs to be a measure within time, cost, quality, volume, or efficiency. In the case you would like to know more about that, feel free to send us a message and we can send you some more details around this. You see the color code here in the bottom of interlinking. This would be business layer inputs that you would have. Furthermore, you would need the rationale behind it. In this case, there is two rationales, which actually links to two target groups. Let me mention these examples. The one would be the measures, the exact cost per claim per customer. Who wants to know this? That's top management is the target group. The second rationale is enables and support decision making to reduce customer claims administration costs. Who's interested in this rationale of the measurement? The target group is finance management. So until now you don't only have the indicator, the definition of it, the specifications within a KPI or a PPI, how to work with it. You have the rationale behind it and the target group. Missing would be how you would calculate it. This is something we see in organizations often missing. Therefore, the business intelligence team certainly needs to, or the analytics team needs to spend a lot of time and hours and work figuring out how are we going to calculate this. In this case, about average cost per claim, it would be divide total number of claims by total accumulated claims costs. So in addition to that, when you have the calculation, you would need to have the link to the process contact, as well to the application owner and the data owner. This gives you an interlink of who would you work with in the organization. Obviously the calculations with the process owners and the data either within the applications or the data owners. So we now have a lot of points to it. We are missing drill down dimensions, which could be regional or divisions. Furthermore, process activity measures, meaning this would be what's my process or activity measure. In this case, it would be evaluate settlement. We could furthermore need the information of where is the source where I would get this information. In our fictional scenario around this indicator we chose, this would be WebSphere Insurance Content Pack. Could furthermore be some other solution you would have specific for your claims handling or your applications. Then the link to the business competencies. So obviously I have this claim in a certain area. The business competency is property and casualty, and it's property and casualty, quotations and underwriting. That would be the operational competency. So right now we know where it is, which process is involved, my drill down dimensions, the owners, my rationale, my target, my calculations, as well as my specifications, how they interlink. What could be needed are furthermore the link to the service flows. In this case it would be measurements of my services, or it could be a link to service tiers. This measurement of average cost per claim is a tactical measurement. Why? It is about control, it's about governance, it's about monitoring of what is happening for evaluations and audits. Therefore we would know it's a tactical measurement. It's not a strategic and it's not an operational. We could have furthermore two important links, and then we are summarized of this is the information we would need. That is the link to the strategy and thereby the goal connections, and the link to the critical success factors, therefore the objectives of an organization. So the critical success factor that supports an average cost per claim would be reduced cost of insurance policies sold. That's a strategic critical success factor for many insurance organizations. The strategy this supports would be cost efficiency. That's the strategic business objective. We see that these informations would be important in order to really do performance modeling. To therefore link it to performance analytics, the process, the performance drivers, and as we obviously see, the value drivers of an organization as well. So here we saw an example, and this is the template. This is literally a leading practice template. For those of you who don't know part or haven't heard it in a session before, Leading Practice is an open source community that actually shares parts of these templates, tools, frameworks up around process modeling, process reference framework, and enterprise architecture, process architecture, value modeling. So right now I want to give over to Mark Stanford, who would like to present how would you do this actually in a tool. How would you enable such advanced modeling?
Great. Thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure to be working with you once again. And during the presentation, I'll show a performance management example from Acme Global, a fictional Fortune 100 financial services company. Early in their performance management initiatives, Acme Global recognized that part of their strategy should be to focus on better claims processing. They developed specific strategies to better direct, analyze, prioritize, and generally control their claims processing, enabling the right relation between the value drivers and performance drivers. Their strategy map, which is visible on my screen right now, shows the strategic business objectives, the critical success factors, and the key performance indicators and how they are related. So in other words, meeting these KPIs will fulfill this critical success factor, and therefore this strategic business objective will be achieved. This graphical representation is linked and aligned with the business models, the process models, and analysis. So here, the performance model dimensions that Professor Mark was describing earlier show who's responsible for each KPI. I'm now looking at average cost per claim, how it's calculated, dividing total claims by total accumulated costs, the purpose or rationale for this KPI, and also the category. In addition, this linkage displays the business model competencies that will fulfill and deliver each one of the KPIs and critical success factors. So if I go back briefly to the KPI, if there's no business competency linkage, then you have a gap in a KPI that can't be fulfilled. Also, starting at the business model perspective, I can drill down into each competency and understand the organization processes and activities that must achieve those KPIs. And so here's a specific process in the context of the specific process activity in the context of the process, and it will fulfill the KPIs that we were looking at before. So later, I'll show this specific process model in more detail, and I'll demonstrate how the organization's performance model can align and drive a transformation project. It's really cool to watch. So for now, I'll return control to Professor Mark, who will show how to apply the value and performance drivers to one's business model.
Mark, this was really impressive to see, and I guess there is no doubt that we saw again the power of what does it mean if we are linking the aspects of and can capture a strategy, the critical success factors. This gives me the link to value drivers, the link to the competencies, furthermore the link to the competencies and the processes, and the critical success factors to my KPIs or PPIs, so I have my performance drivers that I can both link to competencies, resources, owners, different roles, as well as the process. So this is really a powerful aspect to be ordered to capture them, to literally go from strategy to execution, to therefore enable continuous improvements through performance modeling. So let's have now a look into the business model of insurance. We have a scenario we would like to discuss. So obviously we promised that we would like to look at the business model of insurance. Here is an example. For those who have not seen some of the other web sessions, let me very short describe the basic principle. You see on the top the business areas. So that would be financial risk, human resource, information technology, life, property and casualty, marketing, sales, service, distribution, etc. Then I would have the competencies within here. I have sorted, meaning classified and grouped into strategic, tactical, and operational competencies. Let's take a look of our scenario. We want to zoom in to property and casualty aspects. Within here we want to look at the flow, and we all know that in banking, government, insurance, and lots of other complex organizations, there is not only a process flow, there is a customer flow, meaning a service flow that plays a role. So right now we want to look at both. So let's take a look at the service flow that goes in. So we have a customer calling in at a customer service. At the moment he comes with a property or casualty claim, there happen certain steps where you perform initial review, discuss with claimant, create a loss notice, etc., etc. So you would have certain steps. These steps and activities are defined within here, 1 to 6. Then I have a service flow. Please note, you see the sign here. I have a service flow from customer service to claims handling. This is a complex service because I start to validate the customer, validate his policies, do log status of the work that is done and how it has been working the claim. There is a service flow between this to our whole property and casualty operations support. What does operations support do? They perform detailed review. They create the claim, assign investigators and adjusters. They log the status. They cut the check and close the claim, log payment, etc. So here really happens, in this case, there's lots of main and supporting services, lots of main and supporting activities and processes. There is furthermore still a service flow to property and casualty risk management. In this case, this risk management would do the following. They perform the risk assessment, investigate the claim, do possible fraud protocol, or perform and check, update the litigated investigation forward to the state fraud division in the case that is needed. And by the way, that's a quite complex process we're talking about here, which you already indicate. So this is the business modeling which you saw in session 1 and 2 applied within the different areas. Then there is a flow back between the property and casualty contract maintenance again. In this case, they assess the claim, prepare the rejection, if that's the part, or prepare the settlement, update the pending claims, and finalize the claim. Also, this has a flow. In this case, it is not a service flow, it would be an information flow. By the way, we all know there's lots of information flows within this. So there's processes partly siloed, partly going cross. There is service flows and there's information flows. So right now we So this is where the challenge comes of performance analytics, performance management, performance monitoring, and actually performance drivers when you have this much involved. And this, by the way, is a quite, let me say, not complex process or not complex aspects, but very important. So you update the customer account, log the status, then it goes back to the property and casualty contract, quotations and underwriting, where right now you would evaluate the settlement, update the premium and exclusions, notify the customer service, etc. So enough of this flow. As we all know, we could be going on with this. So let's take a look at what we had. We have certain competencies involved. That's the one where you would see the numbers. And the numbers that you would see are the activities, meaning the process. So let's take a look at this in a list. So the numbers you would see here on the very right, you see on the very left, at least the 15 of them. It didn't fit all in the page, so I took for 15 of them. And then we have the specific activities. So these numbers on the right side that we looked at would fit to the very aspects of the competencies that were involved. So let's have a look of how this involves if I want to start interacting and put this into a process model. And in this case, I give over to Mark Stanford from iGraphics, who will show us literally in the modeling of iGraphics, how would I capture this? How would this look? Mark Stanford.
Thanks again, Mark. So by overlaying those activities across the operational competencies, Professor Mark showed the integration of the business model and the process model of which you are now looking at on my screen. So let's take a look at this in a little more detail. It's a BPMN 2.0 compliant diagram with your typical events, activities, gateways, and the sequence flow through the process. Now, what's not typical is the extended BPMN notation used to model specific manual services, automated tasks, flow rule sets, and reporting tasks. Now, why do we need these extensions? Well, the extensions are necessary because a service is not always automated. A task is not always manual. And it's important to model these reporting tasks because these will explicitly capture the information needed to track those KPIs and process performance indicators in our performance monitoring tool. And that leads to better decision making. In addition, I've also modeled business objects like the issue or the rejection notice, and information objects like the loss notice and policy information. These flow through the information flows in the process model that I've highlighted in orange, and I've also highlighted the activity steps those information flows touch in orange. Now, these will be very important, and I'll show you their usefulness in our next segment. You'll have to hold on for that. We'll then implement and test an improvement to this process model and monitor it to see that it meets our performance strategies and goals. But until then, Professor Mark, I hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think there is no doubt that we see now the power of being able to link not only of aspects of process modeling, but literally linking to business modeling. What I think was very, very powerful, what we just saw, was the ability where process notations could include the information flow, not only data objects. So the ability that iGraphics, using the leading practice principles, now that they adapted these to the principles and actually split the data objects with the information objects and business objects, right now I can actually see the difference between a process flow and an information flow. Not only the data that is within the process, and thereby the data objects, meaning data entities, data components, data services. I can right now see my information objects, therefore my information input and information output, and the flow. And I think that is very important for many organizations where the siloed process is not that important. And when you actually implement in your ERP system, CRM, or other complex systems, when you automate your process flow, you actually automate the siloed way of working. So this is very powerful what we see, and performance management and the performance drivers are just as much relevant for the information flow as well as for the service flow and the process aspects. So we right now know we started with in the very start that there's aspects and linked to strategic business objectives, thereby, and the critical success factors, thereby the link to the value drivers. We have discussed that the critical success factors, thereby the value drivers, are linked to the competencies of the business. This is where they come from. The value aspects, they get created in the process, but they don't come from the process. So here we see some of the value drivers they would have: improve information management, improve customer satisfaction and loyalty, that we actually see, the activity name, meaning perform initial review, links to improve information management. To discuss with the claimant actually aspects, what is the driver there that the insurance organization has? It is to improve customer satisfaction and loyalty. In the create loss notice, you want to reduce cost of insurance policies, both sold and those things of handling it. So prepare rejection notice. What would be important there? Reduced claims administration cost. So the level of standardization. So we start to get an idea of how these different aspects play a role throughout the flow. If we look at the performance drivers relevant for the activities, because this is how we started. We all know that we want to interlink the value drivers, meaning from the business and therefore relevant to the business model, to the processes, and relevant to the performance drivers. So let's take a look at the key performance indicator having an aspect and an impact to the activities. These would be examples here that are relevant to these. So let me go through some of them. So we had a customer service where you perform an initial review. We know the value driver was improved information management. Here the key performance indicator was claims by product line. So they wanted to start to control this. Then, in order to improve customer satisfaction and loyalty, this is within customer service as well. You discuss with the claimant, so the whole aspect is to improve customer satisfaction and loyalty. The key performance indicator, meaning the performance driver, is the number of rejected claims. They want to know how many rejected claims do we have. But it's still a part. So you could have a performance driver that is different than a value driver. They do not necessarily interlink, but they need to be aligned. So, to create loss notice, we knew it's about reducing the cost of insurance policies, meaning through standardizations across sales, etc. Here it is the value of initial loss assessment. It could give you an indication what could we do, how can we standardize, how can we work better with them. Then it's rejected claims, average premium per policy, response time with enter reply, escalated calls with validate the customer, the policy retention, meaning with validating the policies, percentage of overdue claims, that's in the log status, that's improving the responsiveness. So some of these, the performance drivers links to the value drivers. Others it is where it's more, you have a value driver within it which gives an aspects of the goal and what the organization would want to do. But the performance driver is the direction of how does it need to perform. So I think this gave us an indication of how do we link business perspectives over here with the competencies, thereby business model, and the critical success factors with the process modeling and performance modeling perspectives. Right now I would like to hand over to Mark Stanford from iGraphics, who would show us how would you see such reports, where would you see them, how would you have measurements with them then. Mark?
Thanks, Mark. So here's that process model again that I'll enhance while focusing on the KPI that Professor Mark was highlighting earlier. That KPI was average cost per claim, and it's related to the evaluate settlement activity in this specific process. Right now, the average claim cost is about $1,900, noted in the process performance indicator that I'm tracking on this specific process. Now, I've put enough information into this process model, like the duration time of each activity, also the resources required in each one of these departments to process the claims, their cost, and the number of resources, etc., that allow me to actually simulate the real-life process. And I just do that by running the start command. And that produces a report that I can check against real-life statistics to verify and confirm that I built a model that I can use for what-if analysis and simulation. For example, that average number of claim in dollars, that matches what we're seeing in real life. Now, lately, the insurance industry has been having a lot of discussion about what's called the super utilizers. These are the 1% of claimants who generate the majority of claim costs. Organizations are wanting to improve the parts of the process that identify these super utilizers and handle them in the most efficient way possible. Now, because I have a simulation model here, I can use specific capabilities like a trace view to look for bottlenecks in the process and understand the process better, or simply use the simulation statistics. And I did this in earlier webinars. Let me try that word again. Webinars, to understand where I want to identify the best process improvements. But using lead concepts, there's an even simpler method for improving this specific process. Earlier I talked about the information flows highlighted with the orange lines. Well, these are the activities here that I'm highlighting that focus on the super utilizers. Now notice there's a sequence flow between risk management and contract maintenance, but right now there's no information flow between those two departments. At this particular step, the risk assessment, they're gathering a lot of information about the claimant and the claim, and perhaps there's not enough information to flag the specific claim for a fraud or that can be rejected immediately. But that information could be very valuable for contract maintenance. So instead of drawing a sequence flow from risk management to contract maintenance, I'll draw an information flow from those two departments. And the information that I'm passing is the risk information that was acquired in risk management. Now, in talking to contract maintenance, once they found out this risk information was available, they said this will lead us to make better decisions in our part of the process. So this valid claim step, which currently only 10% of the claims are rejected, now they can do better decisions here, and that percentage will change. So I'll modify the process and simulate it to see how this should impact the average claims costs. So I'll do a model run start. Before I do that, I'll specify that I want to append my new simulation results to the previous results. And now we can see that average claims paid, according to the simulation, should be reduced by at least 10%. Now that's a pretty significant drop by just adding additional information flow to the process. If you want to do something really interesting, just go out on the web and do a search for process maps. You'll see that almost all of them do not also show information flows. Imagine if this simple concept could be applied to all processes, how much improvement that could lead to. So now that we've simulated and analyzed this process, we're ready to implement it. And once we implement it, we want to make sure that we're actually seeing the results that we expect. So we do that in our performance monitoring tool, iGraphics Performance Central. So this specific average cost per claim process performance indicator is being tracked in this top graph. We did the implementation of the change in September, and now we can see that 10% drop. We can also see that one of the dimensions to this particular claim category is the region, and there's not a lot of variance by region, so that's an aspect that might have been important but so far is not. So we've monitored this over time, and this cockpit has ensured that we're maintaining our goal and we're delivering the high performance that we want. Most of the successful insurance organizations strike this balance between short-term risks and long-term rewards, and their success is based on the right people offering the right product, supported by high-performance processes like the one I just showed today. I'll turn it over to Professor Mark to finish the conversation.
Thank you, Mark. This is very good. I think there's no questions that we saw really here the link between business models aspects of value drivers, performance drivers, aspects of reporting, how it linked to the business model. So right now I would like to summarize some of the aspects that we have seen. So these are some of the steps that we have been going through. We have looked at and say business model, there is no question that is important. This is the link that we have to business value and to business performance management. Within that, when it gets to the process and the process life cycle, where you have process analysis, process design, process implementation, and running and monitoring the process, within there we have aspects of strategy, technology, the process itself, and how the organization works. This links both to the link between strategy and technology. Well, we all know that that's business architecture. The link between strategy and organizations, that's business governance. The link between organizations and process, this is where we start to get aspects of literally the process. So when we look at it in a smaller step where we have the process and the technology, that would be IT governance. Within here I have the run of the process, where I have process ownership. This is where I link business performance and business value, as well as the aspects of process governance. So this is more the steps we have been discussing. How can I work with my process from process analysis, process design, the process implementation, in order to have measurements, governance, monitoring, control within it. We have written down here some of the steps you would do. From analyze, meaning identify improvement requirements, evaluate goals, objectives, current environment, and value management functions that may be in place, categorize improvement areas, prioritize areas into low, medium, and high change, formulate the transformation and innovation scope. This is a part of your assess models of your processes, where you work with the stakeholders of change, the business goals. Then you get into design, where you describe the potential solutions. You compare one or more alternative solutions. You plot the to-be model. You quantify the impact on the environment, meaning the business, the objectives, the measurements. You describe and blueprint the transformation and innovation improvement, so it links back to what we have been talking about. In this case, a lot of the transformation that can happen of an organization. There I start to develop the to-be models. You obviously nominate your owners and your change owners, your process owners. You quantify the impact, and obviously you describe and blueprint. In the step of the process building of the performance analytical and process intelligence, and for the implementation of this, you carry out the implementation project because you have identified where the, not only from step 1 where the value drivers and goals are, and step 2 you've quantified the different areas and where you could transform them and implement them. Now you actually implement the changes and the improvements, and you roll them out. So you publish the process models with the measurements, with the monitoring aspects. So right now you have process owners who approve them, who can monitor them, who control them, and you can start maintaining them and improving them over time. So it goes over to the run monitoring, where this is where it starts to have the this is where performance analytics, performance and process intelligence starts to have an interlink to continuous improvement. Because in your operations of your processes, you can right now run and monitor, you can measure and monitor the improvements that happened, the changes. you can start gathering, analyzing, and actually reporting the impact of it, as Mark Stanford from my graphics showed us. So you can perform consequence management. You can look at scenarios. You can look at impact and root cause analysis. So this interlinks, all of these steps interlinks both with your good Six Sigma, as well as Lean and TQM, as well as other possible business process reengineering or business process engineering approaches within your process office or business process management initiatives. So this is the link between transformations and business optimization cycles, if necessary, where you can actually have a full continuous improvement loop. So this is where the change would be in use, and you manage the improvements, and you do the measurements and the reporting of the impact of it. So this is a little bit help from us to you of how would you now, because we have had a lot of organizations contacting us saying, we really like the content we see, how do I apply it? So we added right now this slide. This would be our steps in the life cycle. If you are interested into the detailed, we actually have literally the detailed life cycle and which roles would do what, meaning organizational roles, from a business analyst to a process expert to an analytical person you might have. Having had that, let's go to our last slides. We would like to discuss the lessons learned. We have summarized 10 lessons learned we have within here. These 10 lessons learned would be in the areas of, this is the 10 leading practice lessons learned we have had of process intelligence and performance management. And they start with our recommendations to you, where we see the successful organizations, what they do. Get process focused. 2, create your performance drivers. Then engage the stakeholders to interlink if they don't have the value drivers. If they have the value drivers, start the stakeholders to actually specify the value drivers to your specific topic. Because we all know many times you can't do this for the entire organizations. You have to start it within an area. So obviously your stakeholders, to the specific value or performance expectations they have, they would be able to capture this. Then establish monitoring of your process performance, which ensures that process intelligence is integrated with your decision-making process. Now you start having a loop. Now you can be able to actually interlink your performance drivers with your processes and what you can monitor and intelligence in terms of decision-making. So obviously, you can start measuring first. Our recommendation there that we see the successful organizations, keep things simple. Start easy and grow. Don't forget, sync up with strategy through the value drivers, which means you have to link the performance drivers and process performance, and obviously this is the interlink where you have the link between process and performance. And no, process modeling, process management, business process management does not mean you have control of performance management. This is why we say this is how you actually make this interlink. Last point, but not the least important, it's very important. Intelligence is the key for the insight and the decision making. You need an aspect that actually guess what does this mean for the organizations? How do I make decision-making loop within this? This would be our recommendations to you about this. And this concludes our lessons learned around these sessions. If you would have requests for some of the material we presented today, around the examples of the insurance, and this is for the organizations, not the consulting companies listening. If you are any one of an organization who would like to apply it, the leading practice community is an open source. You just You can ask either Gretchen from iGraphics, or you can send us an email, which actually Gretchen will show in a few seconds. We are happy to send you the business model of insurance, possible claims with the cross workflow of information, service, and process, then a claims process model, the performance template I showed that you can actually fill out. We can literally send you the template that you can populate it yourself. Then the performance management aspects, which we shared, and the 10 lessons learned around performance intelligence, if you would like them. With this, my part is finished, and I would give over to Gretchen from iGraphics.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much, Mark. So you mentioned the leading practice material presented today. Along with that, I would suggest that the next steps is to take advantage of the workshops that I mentioned at the beginning. We are offering the opportunity to discuss your specific goals for innovation and transformation through a series of these free workshops with your team. Those workshops are led by iGraphics and Professor Von Rosing, and through the discussion we'll cover your challenges and desired results and actually propose recommended actions and how your business would benefit from them. They've really been a great success so far, and I strongly would encourage anyone to reach out and take advantage of this opportunity. The 2 emails up there, whether you'd like to contact iGraphics or go through Leading Practice, either one is just fine. Just give us a jingle, and we will provide you the next steps. So, of course, another thing you can do is come back and join us for the next webinar in the series. This webinar today actually concludes the topics of transformation, and so our next webinars are going to cover the models that help drive innovation and differentiation. So keep your eye out for the next webinar invitation. It should be coming at the beginning of next year. And if you have any additional questions for Mark Von Rosing, his contact email is here. BPM courses based on leading practice principles are available. You can check them out at the link shown. And for more information on iGraphics, be sure to visit our website or feel free to contact us to get a tailored demonstration of the business process management solutions that you saw in today's presentation or any of the previous webinars. We also can offer on-site consulting to help you assess where you are in your process program and how you can most be successful in the quest for process excellence. So thank you everyone for joining today. We are going to continue with some questions, so if you are able, please stay on the line to hear our Q&A session. For those of you that are going to check out, have a wonderful day.